Hello, greetings, and welcome. Welcome to the East of Eden Studios here this 8th day of June 2024. Well, actually, it may not be a studio, it's more like me here on the end of the sofa. And I'm inviting you in today to listen to a reading of some of my work entitled Idlewild. Now, there's a couple of things we need to discuss before I just tear into this and start reading it to you. And one of them is artificial intelligence. Uh, Anymore, you can take a set of words and feed into a computer program, and it will print a poem. Now, starting to see it on the internet. People are using AI poems and claiming that they wrote them. But now, there's two different ways you can kind of distinguish whether it's authentic writing or artificial intelligence. Number one, when a word originates in your mind, it comes through like a soup, and that word picks up the soup of your mind, so to speak. That's like when you read a letter or an email, you can almost hear the voice of the person that wrote it. Now, if you ever read any Helen Keller, Helen was deaf and blind, but she learned how to read and write. And if you read her works are very cool and quiet. You can tell it comes from a very calm place because there was no noise in her mind. Or if perchance you have read Hitler, like Mein Kampf, something like that, you can see that those words have come from a dark, cramped, regimented place. Now, artificial intelligence comes from a machine. And it's almost got the feel of you can hear the servo mechanisms and the relays clicking in the giant mainframes if you listen close enough. It's a machine, it doesn't have a soul. So the words of an AI poem will be like you ever seen chrome and acrylic glass furniture? It's very shiny and really doesn't have any spirit to it. Well, that's one way to recognize AI. Another way is artificial intelligence is logic based. So it's going to take the words you feed it and try to make sense of it. And it's going to try to follow the rules of grammar. And you can read my stuff, and I don't always follow the rules of grammar. I don't even know what all the rules of grammar are. And I can go back and read some of my stuff, and I have no idea what I meant because I'm not pursuing any logical based conclusion. So that's my feelings on AI. And another thing is, it's not so much poetry as it's kind of like in between. It's poetic thought, is what I like to call it. And I've had people say, why don't you publish a book, or why don't you do this? It's very, very difficult to get a book published. And if you do, it's even more difficult to publish a book that sells. It's a difficult line of work. And the only thing more difficult than getting a traditional book published is getting a book of poetry published. So there's really nowhere for me to go with this except for me to read it or to do something like this. Now, occasionally they do steal your information, steal your intellectual property, and I've had work stolen. Years ago, in the early 90s, late 80s, when I still thought I was a writer, I did something called the shotgun approach. I made dozens and dozens of copies of because kind of this radio stage play thing that I wrote. And I sent that thing everywhere. And it probably wasn't very good. I sent it all over the United States. Me and my father was coming back from the West Coast and was driving through Oregon. And I was playing with the radio. And I actually heard my play being performed, word for word, verbatim. It was my play called The Dark is Always the Same. And it sounded so horrible that I never pursued it. I didn't want to know anything about it. I quit listening to it and cut it off and never gave it another thought. But you can find remnants of The Dark Is Always the Same right there. And this is my self-published book called After the Mardi Gras by R.S. Pierpoint. Now, this is available on Amazon if you ever take a notion that you want to read something like this. I put a lot of work into this and really enjoyed writing it. But then later on, I got some more big ideas and wrote a further one called Wormwood and Gall. This is for brave people, and it has a lot of adult content in it. And I read it now and I say, what the hell was I thinking? But anyway, you can still get these. They're available. But today, we are going to be reading from Idlewild. Years ago, even before the trip to Oregon, before I thought I was a writer, I was sitting in if you're up north where the Yankees are, it's called tavern. But down here in Never Never Land, it's called a honky tonk. And I was sitting in one night, and I met a young woman, and we only had maybe a 10-minute conversation. Never seen her before, never seen her again, over a cup of beer or something. And she was telling me where she was from. And she was from a town called Idlewild. And she kept repeating over and over, I'm from Idlewild, where the men are idle and the women are wild. And I guess that was the only thing she ever learned to say, because that's all she ever said. But anyway, as the years progressed, every Sunday I would leave here from this side of Eden Street, go across into the wilds going up towards the Kentucky Territory up there. And I would, every Sunday, have dinner with my parents, me and the rest of the family. And it meant a lot to them. So, and I would drive the 80, 90 miles up there, 80, 90 miles back every Sunday. So I would, out of boredom, I would take every possible road combination going up there and every possible road combination coming back. I seen all this territory going back all those years for Sunday dinner. So one day I was heading up there and I took a new route. And I was coming back through the country. It was out in the country. And I come down a road and made a turn. I come around a curve up over a railroad track right into Idlewild. It's a real place. You can look at it on a map. It's up above Skullbone there. Skullbone's a real place. And I come over the railroad tracks, and there was only maybe 3 or 4 houses there. The new road, when Ned Ray was governor, started making new roads, and they bypassed all those little towns to put in those big commerce roads. And there I was in Idlewild. I think it had maybe a post office, but it had a main road, went down and teed into the other road that had been bypassed. There's only a couple of houses, but you could see at one time it had been houses with sustenance fields, not great, huge industrial soybean fields, but little fields where they grew corn to feed the hogs and the cows, and the remnants of fence posts and old barns, rusty barbed wire. What it was a place where something had used to be. It wasn't anything anymore. And it's kind of keyed my imagination as to what used to be there. And then I started writing this, Idlewild, The Ornaments of Time. We're going to go in a little bit because I've got a bit of an introduction here. And we're going to start here with this. We're going to read a while because this is rather lengthy and we may have to break this down into more than one part. I'd like to thank my wonderful camera person here and see how tired she gets. But anyway, let's just start reading from it and see where it goes. Across the room, across the waters, across white candles I see you, sitting there, an image in a face reflected in and from the water. a misty rising, fleeting and floating, flying away. Fountain of my understanding, bubbling up from the deep, telling me of the way and the path, lady of the lake, bearing arms, saying that I must fight, for my yielding slows no arrows. The snow-covered fields of Idlewild slumber in the Christmas spirit. Bent umber cornstalks and strands of rusty barbed wire accent and define the old farm fields. A gray sky cloaks the sun and demands that it yield for a season. Harvested corn rows and rusty barbed wire, the never looking up of gray skies in the barren brown of this winter land. My heart searches these old fields for love and memories. Sometimes, every once in a while, I see the bits and pieces of it. Someone I once knew, or maybe my grandmother calling my name. My heart searches these dreary, lonely fields, never looking up to the gray sky above. Speak to me, red bird, language of dreams and visions, thoughts of the past, grief and love, happiness in your fluttering wings. Seeing for only a fraction of a moment, then on your way, winged truth on eternal flight. They tell me of a land across the waters beyond Idlewild, a land where the air hangs heavy and sweet and the sunset burns in the red and tangerine. Some day I will go beyond the seas, out from these cornfields and collapsing barns. My heart will be loosened of the tangle of rusty barbed wire. My soul will become untethered and I will be free. Frost clings to the remaining corn stalks, the harvest long removed. Yellow and browns of winter rule fields and fence rows. Only I remain, a pallid ghost of a memory, like a shadow frozen in time. The decay of old barns and of dying plows litter in the battlefield of life. A solitary crow passes high above, never condescending to perch or land in such a place. Christmas in passing, dripping a small cup in a quickly flowing river. Briefly, we glimpse a flash of ribbon or a scrap of wrapping paper as the wind drives it onward. Christmas in passing. We nod our heads in a bittersweet melancholic greeting. Then it is gone. It will return in a year from now. It will be here, but we may not be. We gazed across the waters upon the island tomb of the princess. As we stared in solemn repose, Christmas slipped quietly by. Idlewild, the city of grief, mourning the loss of yesterday or 5 decades ago. A brightly bedecked Christmas, towing in its wake ribbons and bows, gently calling our names and saying to look again in 1 year's time. Christmas is our heart, and our heart is on the tiny island where the princess sleeps. In the moonlight rising from the mist, I see beyond the muddy fields of Idlewild the risings of towers and ramparts from a Camelot or an Atlantis. This small crossroads is county farmland hidden in plain sight. One must only look and see beyond the rows of harvested corn stubble, beyond the spider webs of old barbed wire, the glory and the magnificence that lie beyond this dream of Idlewild. Little Dog was present when they crucified Christ. He told me of it often, how he sat close to the crosses and a soldier gave him a scrap of bread. Little Dog had no allegiances. A scrap of bread was a scrap of bread, no matter from whose hand it came. Little Dog said that Christ was really seemed quite average looking, but it was difficult for him to tell, for the man was covered with blood, shit, and dirt. Late to the table, and I didn't get served. I don't know what it means. Banquet tables in grassy fields deep in the highlands. Orderly rows of kinfolks, those that came before. Mother of my own, mother of the earth, mother of the ancients. I feel your embrace when the chill wind blows. My kindred searches for the union of the pack. Alone we carry the village with us, reaching across the water and the years. The tribe that cast me out receives us again in the end. The rising from the waters, misty silent shapes, memories and fantasies, form themselves into beings with purpose. Now free floating and traveling the earth, disconnected from their diluvian womb, their purpose is known only to themselves and God Almighty. The in between times, the not fully becoming one thing or another. Checkerboard patterns assert their existence. The redbirds gather in their small cloistered vigils. The cool winter winds challenge the rights of all who tread the muddy fields of Idlewild. Searching the market for friendly faces I have known, many earthbound spirits move about the ancient stalls. The aisles, the rows, and the tables, coins and markers freely changing hands. Buying, selling of the days past and future. They tell me of being able to purchase the souls of men in this place, but my wares are bangles, baubles, and beads, trinkets, tokens, and talismans, friendships, and advice. I don't deal in souls. We stare at ourselves in the cool bowls of still water, while outside the unrelenting rain seek out all weakness and infirmities. Looking inward and outward from the deepest recesses to the farthest reaches of the mind and universe. There will come a time when all has been washed clean and nothing will remain. Our reflections mingled with the twilight. The water returns to its heaven, and the clay bowl returns to the earth from which it came. Floating above harvested rows of cornstalks, the yellow moonlight glow in dying autumn. The breeze carries pieces of broken memories and misty tones of fragrance. Searching and the calling out of names beyond hope and yesterday, moving onward and forward like a committed platoon, seeking some fragment of truth. I wish it were Christmas again. How my soul has become tangled in wrapping paper memories. Cold, snowy nights of long ago speak of times remembered and the forgiveness of sins. Salvation is bow-covered gifts. Candy canes and chocolate are a gift of God. Redemption and resurrection, fruitcake and cider, anointing and rebirth. The cedars cry out, Hosanna. A stranger came to Idlewild in the murky past. His strangeness a mark of Cain upon him. A parcel of land bore his name, a gift from the king centuries before and bygone days. They burned his home and his crops, those of the strange man. Soldiers then came and collected 1/4 of the wealth of Idlewild and restored the man. To this day there is a sign at the gates of Idlewild saying, "Be kind to strangers and sojourners, for thus rideth the wrath of God." My thoughts escape me, they travel about, sometimes in the treetops abiding with the redbirds, joining their winged brotherhood. Other time my thoughts are nailed to the cross. As sins ragged and filthy, God became man? Question mark. My thoughts wrestle me back to the ground. The redbirds and my thoughts take flight, perching upon distant trees and forlorn crosses. Reviewing in perpetuity the ruin and decay, toppled columns and overturned bricks lay in the overgrowth. The past looks like wreckage and refuse. Still, a bit of a ghost arises from the rubble, bidding me to linger and ponder. The past in all of its fiery glory still exists, it just dwells now in the mansion of dreams. In the bare branches of early morning, I see winged salvation looking for purchase. Chattering squirrels chirp away at the forgiveness of sins. Chip away. At midday, the blood of the martyrs nourish crops of pumpkins and gourds. Toward the setting sun and the night falls, the day in pasture ends, as does eternity, leaving behind only crows and old women. Regal purveyor of carrion, shunned in your darkness, a curse for a name, master of the great halls of air, challenged by none, taking to flight to and from your hidden castles and kingdoms. Great avian monster, no one to sing your praise but I. Vulture, I salute thee in thy squadron aloft, dining on the flesh of the earth, never voicing complaint. Mansions of the occult appeared. Mistress of the realm revealed to me the faces trapped in the wall. Distorted from transformation, the souls contorted and howled. Spirits presented themselves, all sizes and forms, wearing their essence in their visible spectrum, peering out from all corners and quarters. The damned and the redeemed. Tortured's hands tilled the soil. Their indecent parcel grew only sin and despair. Daughters of indiscretion were displayed atop stone auction blocks, unaware of mercy or the rains that would wash them clean. Heaven freely spoke forgiveness and redemption, all unclaimed, born in ignorance, dying the same way, unwashed and unforgiven. Summer slows to a crawl, spun sugar clouds languish overhead. My heart beats in memory of distant times, a time when the corn stalks marshaled in battalions of steep green, the air filling with the insect language and melancholia. It has always been this way. Love chases my mind around in the circles and across long rows of sadness. I am alone. We are alone together. Let's stop right there, catch our breath, and then we will pick it up again, part two.